Hi guys, welcome back to City Self-Sufficiency. In this video we're going to be adapting our biltong box so that we can use it for jerky instead. So this is exactly the same box that we had before, the same holes have all still been cut in it. We're just going to be changing a little bit about how it works. We're going to be changing the setup of how the heat gets into it a little bit. But it's still going to be an effective box for making jerky as well as biltong as well. We'll be able to use it for both really easily. So yeah, let's have a look at what we need to do to get started. So the biggest change that we're going to be making to the biltong box so that we can use it for jerky instead is how we get heat into the box itself. If you remember before, we were using a standard light bulb and that was going to be our only heat source. This is what we're using now, and this is a Bavarian bulb. It's much hotter, it's much higher wattage that it uses. Because it gets much hotter, we're also going to need to change how the heat is held in the box. So we're going to be using one of these brackets instead. They're freely available online for any sort of Bavarian setup. Anyone who's sort of building reptile houses will be able to get hold of them, but they're just going to give us a bit more stability and a bit more heat so that the meat dries faster. So one of the first things we want to do is we want to attach the heat source to the top of our lid. I've tried it at the sides, I've tried it slightly off center, and it didn't work either time. I do find in the middle, or as in the middle as you can get, is best. You're going to need to drill through the plastic of your lid. I didn't have quite a big enough drill bit, so I ended up having to widen mine with a file, but that's fine as long as it works at the end of the day. That's all that matters. And we just attach the heat source on. Now obviously I pre-marked my holes before I drilled them, so I know that they're in the right place. And I'm attaching it on using these tiny little screws. I don't know if you can just about see those. These are case fan screws, the same that you use on computers to attach the fan. Let me just there. You can already see just by screwing it on we're having a much more stable heat source than we have with the previous setup. So it just gives that bit of extra comfort knowing that it's not going to move. You don't want it moving when it's going to get this warm. So I'll just attach those on. Now you can see that once the ceramic holder is in place and the bulb is attached, it is quite a large heat source. It covers quite a deep area, so you need to have had quite a deep box to begin with on this one. If yours was a bit shallow, you might have to either use a different brand of bulb, one that's a little bit shallower, or use a different box. For the biltong box, holding the meat, we used bamboo rods. We just left them stable, everything could move around. It was easy to change where things were, it was easy to have bigger spaces, have smaller spaces. For jerky, again with the temperature, we really want to keep the meat stable. We don't want to have any risk of it rolling into the lamp. So we're taking those out. And instead, we will use these. So this is a doweling rod that has had tiny little panel pins nailed into it, about a finger width apart on each one. And they slide into the box. So, and they just sit nice and stable, and then the nails stop anything from moving around. So we know that there's no chance that the jerky itself is going to be able to touch the lamp, which will cause it to burn, basically. There we go. So once those are in place, we can still be using the same bamboo sticks that we used before. The difference is now they can't move, so we can be much more stable with how things are placed within there. We can keep the central gap nice and still. That's where the lamp's going to be, that's where it's going to be heating. If we're using smaller strips of jerky, we can have them really close together. If we're using thicker strips, we can have it with a good big gap in between. Cut the doweling rods to size so that they're protruding from the edge of the box by about 1.5 inches on either side. Once you've cut them down to size, we can then add in the nails. Obviously, make sure they fit through the hole at the end, otherwise you're going to need to enlarge that. But as long as it fits reasonably snugly, don't worry if it rolls around a little bit. Once the supporting rods are in place, that will hold it. As long as it fits through, then that should be fine. So once you've cut your doweling down to size, and it's going to fit just outside the box, you need to hammer in the nails to hold the bamboo battens stable. Leave a couple of inches at the end. That's so that you can poke it through the hole on the box itself without them getting in the way. And then you just need to hammer in these little nails. These are tiny little panel pins. You see how small they are? They're only 1.5 centimeters each. So they are a little bit fiddly. They do take a little bit of getting used to, these ones. but we're literally just gonna hammer them straight in. Don't worry about measuring the distance between it, there's really not much point. Try to keep your fingers out of the way. As I say, they are a little bit fiddly. If you get thicker doweling, this will be a bit easier, but mine was quite narrow. Just run along, hammering them in. Don't worry about them being sticking up at odd angles, don't worry about anything like that, just get them in. So once you've gone all the way along your doweling, adding in nails at roughly even intervals, you then need to add one onto the other side. And you can see I've already kind of like had to play with this one to see where I need to put it. It needs to be so that once your rod is through the hole in the box, then the nail sits on just the other side, just to stop it from being able to pull back through again. Because I've pre-drilled this one, I can just push him back in his hole, go in there. So you can see that once it goes pop through the hole, we then turn it around and it will not go back. So it holds this nice and stable for you. And then once you've done one on both sides, you're ready to go. And that's all there is to it really. That's one biltong box which is now being adapted for jerky. So we've got a much stronger heat source, so it's going to get much warmer in the box, and we've got much more rigid structure so that we can keep things nice and stable, nothing's going to roll together. Everything is just a lot more safe when dealing with higher temperatures. Obviously to change it back to biltong, you just swap the bulb back again. Swap it back for a standard 60-watt bulb. But for now, there we go. There is one Jerky Dehydrator all ready to go.